Today, we'll cover recent trades. I had an amazing week last week and made 3 beautiful trades. You'll witness how the engineered liquidity is being designed. All the liquidity pools gathered by millions of stop losses. As a trader, what shall we do? How to manage positions and the risks? We have so much to cover. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. With this video, I'll cover 3 perfect trades. If you are looking for a structured table of contents, I set it up for you. You can find it on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. It is important to watch videos in order so you will not miss anything. Let's talk about the last week, one of the best weeks that I had, full of winners. It felt good after the last weekend's tricky price action. On 20th February, I tweeted that I was expecting this top liquidity to be hunted because this is a classic price action of Bitcoin. It always aims to hunt forming liquidity. When I look at the daily chart, price started to range after this daily liquidity hunt. Please note this. Bitcoin loves to create mini ranges after the hunt of high time frame liquidity, the major swing highs and lows. Let's zoom in on this area and check out the 1-hour time frame. You can notice the forming liquidity here as in my tweet. Now this is an experience. I almost knew that there was going to be a breakout here. And all the social media were going to go crazy with the to the moon posts. I bet thousands of traders jumped on this breakout. What I noticed is this internal liquidity was taken and the price was ready to claim the forming liquidity above. I had to enter the trade before the breakout, before the liquidity hunted. Let's dive into a 15-minute chart and check things in detail. As you can see, there is a very classic support and resistance flip here. If you look at the internal structure, it was already bullish. It was preparing for the fake breakout. If you draw your premium discount, you can get an idea of where the price reacted. And this masterpiece green candlestick, great displacement and giant imbalance as I like. If you draw your optimal trade entry, you'll notice that it also collides with it. So, what do we have here? Discount zone, imbalance, SR flip area, optimal trade entry, and internal bullish structure. I should have set an order for this SR flip area or the midpoint of the imbalance. I missed that opportunity. The movement was so fast. I barely got in after the rejection. And as in my tweet, it hunted the top liquidity and made a fake breakout, trapping out all the new traders. So, where they entered was my take profit point. Funny, but the truth. Later on, I posted another tweet. I was looking at this range. I was focusing on these obvious equal lows. As I said in the tweet, I wanted the price to hunt the equal lows first and create a deviation, then go up. This was my game plan. Okay, let's see the trade. The moment I saw this range, my game plan was clear and obvious. It was deviating up and down. I needed it to hunt the equal lows first, as in the tweet, and then move up, creating this deviation which I expected to happen. By the way, some people are asking me about drawing ranges. There's no perfect range drawing. A range could be smaller or bigger. What we focus on is the bias. We use ranges to get a bias to trade. Let's zoom in on the area in 5 minutes time frame and talk about the trade. The first thing I noticed was the new internal equal lows. So it has a high time frame equal lows and now a low time frame equal lows. Double reasons to go down. I started to shape the possible trade ideas in my mind, drawing my premium and discount zone. I also drew my optimal trade entry to look for possible entry points. I even go lower time frames to find imbalances for each entry point. This 1 minute imbalance was a clear entry point for me. This internal liquidity was obvious. I wanted the price to hunt this before moving down. So, to sum up, what was my trade idea? Clear the internal liquidity, reach the OTE, and touch the imbalance, make a possible structure shift, and I was going to enter. Not just that, this breaker block and SR Flip area was significant to enter. I was also watching this minor SR Flip area which also collides with the EQ point. So, changed my decision. I divided my entry risk into two pieces. I divided 1R to 0.5R and 0.5R. I set the order with 0.5R to this my original entry point. With the rest of 0.5R, I made an entry right here. This was a low probability entry. I had to set the stop loss way above the 1 minute imbalance for a possible internal liquidity hunt. I had to give this trade some room to breathe. This is how you manage your risk dynamically. Trading is all about making decisions. You are managing a crisis here. You should handle it well and make important decisions. Every trade will challenge you. After the last trade, I tweeted again. Well, I tweet so much nowadays. As I said in the tweet, once the equal lows hunted, I did not long it immediately, not yet. I wanted the price to adjust itself and give me an entry opportunity so I can make decisions. Because sometimes I send orders right after liquidity hunts and half of them end with a break-even. So half of the trading is actually waiting. You need to wait and be patient. There's nothing you can do about it. Let's talk about the trade. Once the equal lows hunted, I waited for a long time as I stated in the tweet. I started to observe the price. I noticed this drop-based rally area. Very clear demand zone that can hold the price. Now let's zoom in on the chart and focus on the 2-minute time frame. What do you see here? The madness of candlesticks confuses you, right? Do not worry, it will get clear in time. As always, start with liquidity. Just look for where the liquidity is. The relative equal high area is quite obvious at the top. I waited for this trade for a long time actually. So you can notice a very small internal break right here. But in my opinion, this was not enough. Low time frames are quite tricky. There are many fake breaks. I needed something big and powerful. Much later on, the price made this crazy upward move once it felt a significant imbalance. This was the moment I wanted. Powerful displacement. After watching the price for a while, I made an entry. Since the price was a mess, I did not go for precision here by looking for tiny imbalances. I just made the entry with a large enough stop loss that will cushion me. What else did we have here? Let's closely check out. Accumulation phase, manipulation phase at the range low, expansion phase to the range EQ, power of 3. As a side note, you can see a lot of PO3 around the range high and low deviation points. Here is another trick for you. Draw your Fibonacci from where the formed liquidity to the hunted liquidity. What do you have here? Reverse optimal trade entry, ROTE. As you can see, all price actions are connected to each other like puzzle pieces. So we only trade one strategy, price action. Okay folks, with this video we had a deep understanding how the liquidity works and how to manage positions. Very useful methods for day traders and scalpers. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.